Donald Trump is losing his mind or has lost his mind, that Donald Trump is mad. Not that Donald Trump is erratic or unpredictable or difficult to work with, but he is actively mad, as in there is no way of imposing comprehension upon his conduct. It makes no sense. It is mad. Donald Trump has gone mad.
There comes a point where even the loudest defenders can't keep defending, and that's exactly what we're seeing now with Donald Trump. For years, critics like JamesOBrien were mocked for calling out what they saw as erratic and unpredictable behavior. They were dismissed, ridiculed, and accused of exaggeration. But now, the tone is shifting, and not from his usual critics. You've got Daniel Hannan, a strong Brexit supporter, openly suggesting Trump is losing his mind. Then there's Rusbridger, one of the most respected journalists in the UK, warning about a serious decline. And even Matthew Parris, a conservative voice, is now saying Trump is too unstable to remain in office. These aren't fringe voices. These are establishment figures from completely different camps. And when people like that all land on the same conclusion at the same time, it's no longer just criticism. It's a warning sign. Before we dive into the full video, don't forget to like and subscribe for more real talks.
Or you stop thinking that Donald Trump is moments away from restoring normality, restoring a semblance of decency. When you stop thinking that the bad behavior is an aberration and the status quo will be restored, it is a strange moment. And in many ways, despite having gone quite early on it compared to other people in my profession, we still went quite late. You know, still thinking during the state visit, for example, well, maybe this will nudge him into a place where he stops being so mad, where he stops being so petulant, he stops being so unhinged, he stops being so erratic, he stops being so unpredictable. Maybe cozying up to him at the state visit, I think this was Keir Starmer's calculation, will be enough to sort of shock him into decency. There were plenty of people still in the media still using phrases like Trump derangement syndrome to describe those of us describing Trump's derangement. And there's something there for the PhD thesis writers of the future to look at. What on earth would possess someone commenting on current affairs to attack the people describing a mad president instead of attacking the mad president?
We're doing very well on the war front, to put it mildly, I would say. Somebody said, on a scale of 10, where would you rate it? I said about a 15.
We went early on calling him deranged, on calling him mad. That's not a diagnosis. And even if it were, it's not one that I'm qualified to give. Over the course of the last few days, three men who are prominent contributors to public discourse in this country, three men have all arrived at the same conclusion. And it is interesting because they are very, very different men and they speak from very, very different positions. You have a crazy Brexiter, the wrongest man in the world, Daniel Hannan. You have one of the finest journalists this country has produced in the last 50 years, Rusbridger, former editor of The Guardian and Prospect magazine. And you have one of my favourite columnists, despite the fact that he sometimes writes things that I balk at, Matthew Parris in The Times, a former Conservative MP from a wing of the Conservative Party that really, in its current guise, no longer exists. So three very, very different perspectives. These are the three headlines that have appeared in the last few days. Rusbridger first. I was already worried about Trump's mental decline. It just got worse. Matthew Parris in The Times. Trump is too deranged to continue in office. And then Daniel Hannan in the Washington Examiner. Donald Trump is losing his mind. So a consensus from three very, very different corners of commentary that Donald Trump is losing his mind or has lost his mind, that Donald Trump is mad. Not that Donald Trump is erratic or unpredictable or difficult to work with, but he is actively mad, as in there is no way of imposing comprehension upon his conduct. It makes no sense. It is mad. Donald Trump has gone mad.
Surprise. Who knows better about surprise than Japan? Okay? Why didn't you tell me about Pearl Harbor? Okay?
Three of the most powerful men in the United States of America. One of them encountered a dead raccoon, got out of the car, cut its penis off and took it home. One of them likes to give sermons and claim that the US military acts according to God's will, which of course makes him a religious extremist of exactly the type that we are encouraged to detest in Iran. And one of them is, according to reports, I think in the Washington Post, off his nut. And they've all been put in position by Donald Trump before he was widely regarded to be mad. Then you turn your attention to Trump. And, I mean, what would you even pick as evidence of escalation? Because we have sat here now for a long time pointing out how hard it is to keep up. But something changed last week in that a new dimension emerged where it wasn't being overcome and subsumed by the next big announcement. For me, the Jesus picture, that was a moment of almost unbelievable madness. I'm going to post a picture of myself portrayed as Jesus. The message that he posted about Iran using foul language and praising Allah, that seemed to me to be marks of a level of madness not previously reached by Donald Trump. And then he turned upon his former cheerleaders, Tucker Carlson, Megyn Kelly, Candace Owens and Alex Jones, calling them in capital letters nut jobs and losers with low IQ. These are the reasons why Daniel Hannan, Matthew Parris and Alan Rusbridger have all gone there. And it's a place they've gone to that even 6 months ago, I always felt a little bit uncomfortable about it. Not because of the mental health element, not because of being insensitive about mental health in general, but just because it felt, I don't know, it felt too big to do. You can't accuse the president of being insane. You can't accuse the president of the United States of America of being mad. So about 6 months ago, it felt too big. At the time, of course, the worst commentators in the world were describing people telling the truth as having Trump derangement syndrome. I wonder if there was some projection there. Do you think maybe they could smell the madness in the wind, but they'd staked so much on Donald Trump because they loved the racism so much and the misogyny, the sexism and the climate change denial? Do you think that kind of commentator just kind of knew things were going? I can't believe I've staked everything on him. He's mad. I know what I'll do. I'll accuse all the people calling him mad of being mad. Do you think there's a little bit of that going on? I don't know. I mean, I've heard people accuse critics of Donald Trump of loving the Ayatollahs in Iran, as if you can't hold two thoughts in your head at the same time. So if you bet the lot, if you staked your entire reputation, such as it is, on Donald Trump being a good guy, because you love the racism, you love the sexism, and you love the climate change denial, drill, baby, drill, then when you begin to fear that he is actually mad, he is all of the things that his critics have been saying for ages, then you have little choice but to accuse his critics of being mad. There is, isn't there? That's it. It's dropped the penny. That's what happened, isn't it? Because it's such a strange phrase to use, Trump derangement syndrome. It happened with Brexit, of course. You back Brexit so strongly that when the evidence emerges that all of the people condemning it were right, you have to attack them. You can't argue with them anymore. You can't have a debate anymore, so you have to attack them. You have to question their mental health. Here are people calling Donald Trump mad. Oh, my God, I think they're right. No, you're mad. You're the mad one. You've got Trump derangement syndrome, and you love the Ayatollahs.
Restaurants, dry cleaners, corner stores. What is a corner store? I've never heard that term. I know what a corner store is, but I've never heard it described. A corner store. Who the hell wrote that?
The insanity of the most powerful political leader in the world posting an AI image of himself dressed up as the Son of God, healing the sick, is impossible to convey. We probably didn't feel it land as heavily as it would do, as it should do, because it comes on the back of so many other transgressions and so many other aberrations.
What was the diagnosis?
It was, I think it was a terminal diagnosis.
He would be dead by June.
Okay, that wasn't public, but yeah, okay, that's...
Rusbridger goes on, in most places, the HR department would be looking at a twin-track policy of support and protection. A leader who behaved so aberrantly that it became routine for observers to suggest that they had lost their marbles. I mean, it's there.
$8 million for making mice transgender.
What's happened this week, and just in the last week, is it? We're talking about a week, the last 10 days, that makes you think that the President of the United States of America has lost his mind? What is the collection of behaviours, circumstances, observations? For the first time, it feels to me that the flooding of the zone, the constant avalanche of awfulness, has somehow failed. We are not sitting here thinking, oh, here he goes again. We're sitting here thinking something even worse than what went before has happened.
Do you think that men should play in women's sports?
I really don't have an opinion on that.
You don't, I'll bet you do.
No, I'm here about no
pizza.
tax on tips.
Yeah.
What is it about the last week that has crystallised the thought in your mind that Trump has lost the plot? And do we know enough about American politics to conclude or to wonder what might happen next? It's a Simon Marks moment, really, isn't it? I think J.D. Vance would have to set the ball rolling, wouldn't he? He'd have to set the process in motion. But what is it that has made everybody come round, to be a bit self-referential for a moment, to what we've been saying for ages, that Donald Trump is bonkers? James is in Dundee. James, what do you reckon?
Hello, James.
Hello, mate.
Love your show. First-time caller.
Welcome.
James, I'd go all the way back to when he started posting as the Obamas as animals and himself as an animal. The fact that was
the
unchecked.
Lion King, wasn't it?
Exactly. And obviously, a bit questionable posting the Obamas as monkeys. That's highly inappropriate.
Well, I mean, obviously it is. Crikey, we don't want anyone to think I'm about to start arguing again. But if we accept, and I do, absolutely, 100% accept that Trump's appeal lies in his racism, his misogyny and his climate change denial, that's the sort of holy trinity of things that people really like, whatever they may be prepared to publicly admit to, then you're not going to alienate anybody. Yes. You're not going to alienate anybody by doing a racism, are you?
No, James. But I think when we start questioning his sanity more recently, as you've mentioned, it's the timings he's posting, and the fact that the so-called leader of the free world has unvetted access to social media.
He's sitting up in bed posting schoolboy memes and swearing at the Iranian nation, threatening to destroy their civilization.
If those aren't alarm bells, then I don't know what are, James.
No, I agree. So it's almost as if it's everything that has gone before dialed up. The volume has been turned up, and the attempts to excuse or explain it become ever harder, to the point where they become pretty close to pointless. He has lost the plot now. He's looked like a man losing the plot for the longest time, but he now looks like a man who's lost the plot. Yes, and James, please, I'm by no means an expert or a politician, but it seems like in his first term he was held far more to account, whereas now he's got a Marco Rubio, a J.D. Vance, a Pete Hegseth. So this is chicken and egg. This is chicken and egg. I think you make a brilliant point, is that narcissism goes on untrammeled. And also, he did win. This is an important point. What does that do to your ego? You've already got an overdeveloped ego or a weird ego, and then you win. And people start treating you like you're Jesus. Not just on social media, but in the flipping Oval Office, laying their hand. Maybe he started believing the hype around him, and it's finally tipped him over the edge. It's like the last bit of the jigsaw is the sycophancy. How bizarre. Oh, that's the second big insight of the day. Peter Mandelson, the reason why he was a brilliant appointment is exactly the same reason why he was an appalling appointment. And the final straw on the camel's back of Donald Trump's fantasy is actually the sycophancy that he's surrounded himself with. That's what broke his brain. The final thing was the thing that he thought would protect him. I don't know. It's thinking out loud. Nice work, James. It's coming up to 11:30. You're listening to James O'Brien on LBC. Imagine, writes the world's wrongest man, Daniel Hannan, it was someone other than President Donald Trump. Suppose a different leader were posting deranged rants in the small hours, insulting the spiritual leader of 1.3 billion Catholics, threatening entire civilizations with annihilation, and comparing himself to God. What would be the reaction? That's not a rhetorical question. I want you to think about that as we head towards the headlines. If it was any other world leader posting deranged rants in the small hours in which he insults the Pope, the spiritual leader of 1.3 billion Catholics, he threatens entire civilizations with annihilation while swearing and conducting himself like a saloon bar drunk, and compares himself to God before lying about it, what would the reaction be? I don't even know where to begin pondering the question of what the world would do if Joe Biden had behaved like this. But you don't need to.
I predicted all of it. I predicted Osama bin Laden would knock out the World Trade Center. I made that prediction a year before he did. I said, you better get him. He's a bad guy. I watched him be interviewed one time, and I said, that's a bad guy. You better get him.
Nathan writes, he's reached epic levels of ego and power. He's always been like this. Just look at the comments he's been making for decades. It's not madness, it's just him, which is arguably scarier. I disagree. I think something's happened in the last week. I think it could be what you identify, actually. There's something about the idea, if you're in a laboratory and you've got a test tube that contains absolute power. You know that phrase, power corrupts, absolute power corrupts, absolutely. And he has created an environment of absolute power. I don't know how much you can stomach of the Oval Office or the public meetings where they all sit around telling him he's amazing. It's like something that you would associate with Caligula or a particularly toxic Roman emperor. You all sit around. They all sit around telling him that he's amazing, truly amazing. Not just like telling him, "Hey, you're pretty good. You're a pretty good president." But they say you are probably the finest human being that's ever lived. You should leave your body to medical science because you are physically extraordinary. I mean, they just pour this utter bilge into both of his ears all the time, and it has done something to him. Is it the sycophancy he created in order to insulate himself from criticism that has tipped him over the edge? Or is it something else? This is from Jim. The joke with the Japanese Prime Minister shows that he has lost all perspective and any comprehension of right and wrong. That was an extraordinary moment. But, yeah, maybe it was actually a sign that he'd just lost that. So he'd behave outrageously, but always within some parameters. God, he's so shocking. He's so shocking, but I love him. And then he does something, so, you know, you're not going to get offended on the part of the Japanese people if you're a big Donald Trump fan. But then he went after the Pope and pretended he was Jesus. He's lost the parameters that used to marshal his madness, or his depravity at least, appear to have disappeared, don't they, in the last few days? Mark goes down the dementia route. I don't think he has lost his mind, James. This is the sign of dementia. Sundowning dementia is what we're watching. My wife is a nurse, and this is what she sees daily. This is what a deteriorating dementia patient sounds like, in which case, of course, we are bound to show more sympathy towards him during his decline than he has ever shown towards anybody, up to and including people who have died, after which, of course, he's announced himself delighted to see them go. Good morning, James, writes Lee. The evidence for the Mango Mussolini losing or having lost his mind has been building for a while. Don't forget the AI video he posted of himself defecating or dropping feces on the No Kings protesters. Again, this is the thing that I'm taking away so far. All of this is horrible behaviour, but you can see the base lapping it up. The racism, the misogyny, the climate change denial. It's always 1, 2 or 3 of those things that excuse every single thing he does. But this shows he's lost his ability to know where that line is. He's attacking the Pope. He's lost his ability to know where that line is. And what's that about? Is that sundowning dementia? I don't know enough to answer the question. Gay's in Bath. Gay, what do you think?
Well, I wish he'd read the book, if somebody's written it, How to Bluff Your Way as to Being a President, because if somebody has written it, he probably stopped after the first chapter where it says you can just be as bossy and shout at everybody.
But that's not mad. That's not lost mind. That's not derangement. We're looking at something different this week.
I think he's just plain evil now, and I don't know if you saw. My attention was drawn to one of his latest tweets or
posts.
whatever posts.
Yeah.
which was when he was playing Frank Sinatra and My Way.
No,
and you think, my God, yeah, so Hitler killed himself in the end.
Yeah,
and you think, but, you know, regrets, I've had a few, but then again, too few to mention. And is it an awareness he has of his decline that he only sees one way out, like Jonestown? You know?
Well, yeah. I mean, I think you've leapt a bit. You've reached a bit there, and I haven't seen the clip that you refer to. But the idea that his conduct in the last week has reached parts that previous conduct had not reached.
Well, also, he's almost getting a bit of a high on it because he's not been asleep at meetings. He's out there, isn't he?
Sitting up in the middle of the night, posting the weirdest things now on social media. Also lying through his teeth. I mean, in a way, he's always done that, but that's moved up a notch, claiming that the Pope thinks it's okay for Iran to have a nuclear weapon. That's up there with accusing somebody criticising Donald Trump of somehow being a fan of the Ayatollah. It's a level of derangement that is almost impossible to believe unless you've actually heard it. You could find out the Pope's position on nuclear weapons in about 1 second flat. He doesn't think anyone should have them, but to claim that he thinks it's okay for Iran to have one is what happens, I suppose, if you're sitting up in bed at 3 o'clock in the morning. The Pope is weak on crime. Well, he hasn't committed any, as far as I'm aware, unlike the president. And then you come to the fact that he went to watch an Ultimate Fighting Championship pay-per-view fight while his vice president was trying to negotiate an end to the Iran war, along with his golfing buddy Steve Witkoff and his witless son-in-law Jared Kushner. I guess the thing I'm worrying about now, or the thing I'm wondering now, thank you, Gay, is are we watching a culmination or a collapse? Is it simply that all of the guardrails have now been removed? There's nobody there who can even say to him, I don't think you should go to the Ultimate Fighting Championship pay-per-view while JD is in Pakistan trying to negotiate peace with the Iranians.
What's changed isn't just what Donald Trump is doing, it's how people are reacting to it. For years, every controversial moment was brushed aside. Whether it was attacks on opponents or erratic public statements, supporters would defend it, and critics were labeled with phrases like Trump derangement syndrome. Voices like JamesOBrien were mocked for even suggesting something deeper was going on. But now that shield is cracking. When figures like Daniel Hannan, who once aligned with many right-wing positions, start openly questioning Trump's mental state, it hits differently. When Rusbridger raises concerns about decline and Matthew Parris calls him unfit for office, this stops being partisan. Even former allies and media supporters like Tucker Carlson, Megyn Kelly, Candace Owens, and Alex Jones have found themselves targeted and insulted. That's the shift. This isn't just controversy anymore, it's escalation. And when criticism starts coming from every direction, the real question becomes impossible to ignore. Is this just politics as usual, or something much bigger unfolding in real time? Let me know in the comments section what you think, and if you haven't subscribed yet, now is a great opportunity to do so. Thanks for watching and see you in the next video.